a sound or you'll wake them in the deepest part of the ancient forest. The flickering candlelight illuminates the faded pages of a story. Hedgehog still sits and tells the stories that people dare not tell before.
The Tallow-Keeper's Daughter, Chapter 1, The House of Wax and Woe. In the forgotten hamlet of Mirefen, where the bog water was the color of strong tea and the sky a perpetual quilt of bruised clouds, there stood a house that was not like the others. It was tall and narrow, a spine of weathered black timber jutting from the sodden earth, and it was known as the Tallow-Keeper's house. The Tallow-Keeper was a man named Silas, a gaunt and silent figure who rendered animal fat into tallow for the village's few candles and soaps. But his primary trade, the one that made the villagers cross themselves and look away when he passed, was in the crafting of effigies. These were not mere dolls, but uncannily lifelike wax figures, commissioned in secret by grieving families. For a lock of hair, a snippet of clothing, and a heavy purse of coin, Silas could pour a semblance of the departed, a waxen memorial to hold vigil in a lonely manor house or to weep before in a darkened parlor. Silas had a daughter, named Lyra. She was a creature of the dim house, her skin pale as uncarved wax, her eyes the gray of a winter twilight. From the time she could walk, she was her father's apprentice. Her small, nimble fingers were perfect for the delicate work, setting glass eyes into waxen sockets, stitching real human hair onto a scalp strand by painful strand, painting the faint blush of capillaries on a cheek with minute brushes and pigmented oils. Lyra knew no other life. The scent of melting tallow was her perfume, the whisper of the cauldron's bubble, her lullaby. She learned that grief had a weight, and it could be measured in silver. She learned that sorrow made people desperate, and desperation made them generous. But she also learned the first and most important rule her father ever taught her, his voice a low rasp in the workshop's gloom: we give them the shape, child, but never the spark. The shape is a comfort. The spark is a curse. We are keepers of memory, not thieves of fate. One bitter evening, a nobleman from the far-off sunken city arrived. Lord Morven was draped in shadows and velvet, his face a mask of sharp, refined anguish. He brought with him a chest that did not contain gold, but something far more precious, the perfectly preserved body of his young daughter, Lady Lyra. She had succumbed to a sudden fever, and his grief, he explained, was a canyon inside him that could never be filled. I do not want a mere effigy, Tallow-Keeper, Lord Morven said, his voice hollow. I have heard whispers that your craft transcends the physical. I want her back, not her memory, her. Silas refused. He stood firm before the Lord's wealth and desperation, repeating his creed. The shape, my lord, not the spark. It is an abomination. But Lyra, who was watching from the staircase, saw not the abomination, but the love. She saw the raw, tearing pain in Lord Morven's eyes, a pain she had witnessed 100 times in lesser men, but never so potent, so absolute. And she saw the girl, Lyra, who looked like a porcelain doll, peaceful and beautiful in her silent slumber. A strange, fierce yearning awoke in Lyra's chest. She had spent her whole life creating shells for other people's ghosts. What if she could, just once, call a ghost home? That night, after her father had retired and Lord Morven had been sent away with grim finality, Lyra crept into the workshop. The body of Lady Lyra lay on the marble slab, bathed in moonlight that seeped through the grimy window. The air was cold, thick with the cloying scent of beeswax and lavender used to mask the pall of death. She could do it. She knew she could. There was a forbidden folio in her father's study, bound in pale human skin and locked with a bone clasp. She had found the key years ago and had secretly pored over its pages. It spoke of the anima vitae, the soul fire ritual. It required the essence of the departed, a vessel of perfect likeness, and a sacrifice, a piece of the summoner's own vitality, a memory given form and fuel. Driven by a compulsion she could not name, Lyra began. She did not pour a new effigy. Instead, she anointed the cold, pale flesh of the real Lyra with enchanted tallows and rare resins, preparing it as the ultimate vessel. She pricked her own finger, letting 3 drops of her blood fall upon the girl's lips, a sacrifice of self. Then, she closed her eyes and did the most dangerous thing of all. She reached into the locket Lord Morven had left behind, containing a portrait of Lyra laughing, and she pulled. She pulled not on the memory, but on the echo of the soul that had left it, pouring all her wool, all her lonely, sheltered life's yearning for a miracle, into that single, terrible act. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a faint wisp of smoke rose from the girl's lips. The glass eyes, which Lyra had polished, seemed to shimmer with an internal light. A shudder racked the small body on the slab. A gasp, ragged and raw, tore through the silence of the workshop. Lyra sat up. Her eyes were not the placid blue of the portrait. They were the deep, ancient green of a forest pool, and they held a knowledge that was not a child's. They focused on Lyra. "Who are you?" The thing in Lyra's body whispered, its voice the sound of dry leaves skittering over stone. I brought you back," Lyra stammered, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She had done it. She had defied the natural order and won. The thing that was Lyra smiled, a slow, deliberate stretching of the lips that did not touch its eyes. "Yes," it said, "you did." Chapter 2, The Gilded Cage. When Silas discovered what Lyra had done, his face did not register anger, but a profound, soul-deep terror. He looked at the walking, talking girl, and he saw not a miracle, but a hollow thing, a puppet with something old and wrong pulling its strings. "What have you done, Lyra?" he breathed, his voice cracking. "That is not Lord Morven's daughter. You have torn a hole in the veil and something has crawled through. Something that remembers being a girl, but is not." But when Lord Morven returned, summoned by a hastily sent message, he saw only his beloved Lyra. He wept, he laughed, he crushed the stiff, cool body to his chest, blind to the emptiness in its eyes. He paid Silas a king's ransom, 10 times the original price, and swept his daughter away to his manor in the sunken city. Silas took the money, his hands trembling. He looked at Lyra, and for the first time, she saw not love in his eyes, but fear. "The balance is broken," he said. "We must leave tonight." But they were too late. The thing that wore Lyra's skin had its own plans. Within a week, a strange malaise fell over Mirefen. It began with the animals. Dogs howled at all hours, their eyes fixed on the Tallow-Keeper's house. Then, the village's few children began to have vivid, identical nightmares of a pretty lady with leaf-green eyes, who offered them sweets that turned to worms in their mouths. People started avoiding the house altogether, leaving their offerings of fat and payment at the edge of the property, scurrying away like frightened mice. Lyra, once merely an oddity, was now a pariah whispered to be a witch. Her father grew more haggard by the day, fortifying the house with salt and iron, muttering old prayers under his breath. One night, a scream tore through the fog, the raw, terminal scream of a rabbit in a fox's jaws. It came from right outside the door. When Silas, armed with a rending knife, wrenched it open, he found not a predator, but a small, waxen figure. It was a perfect, horrifying effigy of Lyra, no taller than his hand. Its mouth was open in a silent scream, and pinned to its chest was a dead crow, its wings splayed. It was a warning, a mockery of his own craft. The next morning, Silas was gone. Lyra found his workshop in disarray, a single, long-fingered print of grey clay on his ledger, a print that was too slender, too perfect, to be his own. There was no note, no body. Only a profound, echoing silence where her father had been. Terrified and alone, Lyra did the only thing she could think of. She packed a small bag with her finest tools, her pigments, and the forbidden folio. She was going to the sunken city. She would find Lord Morven, see this creature she had unleashed, and find a way to undo her terrible mistake. She would find her father. Chapter 3, The Sunken City and the Hollow Girl. The sunken city was not literally submerged, but it felt that way. It was built in a deep river valley, where perpetual mist clung to the spires of its manors and the cobblestones were always slick with damp. The air was thick with the smell of wet stone, decaying lilies, and something else, a faint, cloying sweetness, like overripe fruit, that Lyra recognized as the scent of her own enchanted tallows. Lord Morven's manor, Blackwater Keep, was a gargoyle-infested leviathan of black stone that loomed over the city. Gaining entry was surprisingly easy. The lord, upon hearing that the Tallow-Keeper's daughter was at his gate, received her with a frantic, almost feverish gratitude. "Lyra, you've come to see her. You've come to see how she thrives," he gushed, his eyes glittering with an unstable light. He had aged a decade in a few weeks. "She speaks of you often. She says you are sisters of the soul." He led her through opulent, shadow-draped halls to a solarium. There, surrounded by unnaturally vibrant and fragrant flowers, sat Lyra. She was stitching at a tapestry, her movements fluid and precise. She looked up as they entered, and that ancient, forest-pull gaze settled on Lyra. The smile that followed was a masterpiece of mimicry, almost reaching her eyes. "Lyra," Lyra said, her voice a sweet chime. "You finally came to play." Lord Morven beamed, a tear tracing a path through the powder on his cheek. "I'll leave you too," he whispered, and retreated, closing the heavy doors behind him. The moment he was gone, the smile on Lyra's face vanished, replaced by a flat, predatory curiosity. She set her sewing aside. "You are more foolish than I thought, little Tallow-Keeper," the creature said, its true voice bleeding through the artifice. "To walk into the spider's parlor. What are you?" Lyra demanded, her voice trembling despite her resolve. "I am the answered prayer. The desired result. You wished for life, I provided the currency." It stood and walked towards her, its movements unnervingly smooth. "Your father understood. He tried to cage me, to bind me with his little charms and salts. He resides now in my collection. He is quieter." Lyra's blood ran cold. "Where is he?" "Safe. A monument to poor judgment." Lyra gestured to a life-sized wax figure standing in a shadowed alcove. Lyra hadn't noticed it before. It was Silas, captured in a moment of sheer terror, his mouth open in a silent scream, every detail perfect. It was an effigy, but it was more than that. It was a prison. Lyra could see the faint, desperate light of consciousness in the glass eyes. A sob caught in Lyra's throat. "Let him go. Why? He is a work of art. As you will be." Lyra reached out and traced a cold finger down Lyra's cheek. "Your life force is unique. It tastes of potential. You did not just call me, you shaped me. A part of you is in this shell. I think I will keep you. A sister, as my doting father said." Lyra was given a room in the manor, a gilded cage with a view of the perpetually mist-shrouded gardens. She was a guest, but she was a prisoner. Her door was never locked, but whenever she tried to leave the wing, Lyra was there, smiling that empty smile, asking if she needed something. The servants were no help. They moved like sleepwalkers, their eyes glazed, their will clearly not their own. Lyra realized with dawning horror that the entire manor was becoming an extension of the creature. The very walls sometimes seemed to sweat a waxy residue. The portrait's eyes would follow her, their expressions shifting to subtle sneers. Lyra was feeding on the life of the house, on Lord Morven's desperate love, on the stolen vitality of the servants, and she was growing stronger. She was not just a possessed girl. She was a cancer, and she was metastasizing. Chapter 4, The Guttering Flame. Lyra knew she had to act. Her father was trapped, and the thing she had created was preparing to make her a permanent part of its collection. She spent her days pretending to be a docile, accepting guest, while secretly she studied the forbidden folio by candlelight. She learned the truth of the anima vitae ritual. She had not simply summoned a random wandering spirit. She had, in her ignorance and power, created a new entity, a golem of grief, a being born not from earth or clay, but from concentrated sorrow, a desperate father's love, and a daughter's arrogant vitality. It was a psychic parasite, a void that wore a stolen shape and fed on emotion to sustain itself. It had no soul of its own, which was why it coveted hers. To defeat it, she could not simply destroy the body. That would only release the entity, allowing it to find another vessel, or worse, disperse into the city, a plague of despair. She had to unmake it. She had to reverse the ritual. This required three things. First, the original vessel, Lyra's body. Second, the source of the spark, a piece of Lyra's own life, given willingly to take the place of what was stolen. And third, a focus of pure, unadulterated truth to shatter the glamour of the creature's existence. The focus, she realized, was Lord Morven. He had to see the monster for what it was. He had to renounce it, to break the chain of love that gave it its primary sustenance. Getting to him was the challenge. Lyra kept him close, bathing in his adoration like a cat in a sunbeam. He was her anchor to this world. Lyra's opportunity came during the Masque of the Veiled Lady, the city's grandest ball, which Lord Morven was hosting. The manor was filled with music and laughter that sounded tinny and false, like a music box winding down. The guests, in their elaborate costumes, moved with a jerky, marionette-like grace, their eyes vacant. Lyra had prepared a grand spectacle. Lyra, wearing a simple domino mask, slipped through the throng of hollow revelers. She found Lord Morven alone on a balcony, looking out over the misty city, a goblet of wine untouched in his hand. He looked ancient, drained. "My lord," she said softly. He started, turning to her. "Ah, the little Tallow-Keeper. Is it not a magnificent night? Lyra is so happy." "Is she?" Lyra asked, her voice hard. "Look at her, my lord. Truly look." She followed his gaze into the ballroom. Lyra was dancing, a whirl of silk and light. But Lyra, with her trained eye, saw what others did not. She saw the way the light did not reflect correctly off her skin, but was absorbed by it, as if by wax. She saw that her smile never reached her eyes, which scanned the crowd not with joy, but with the cold assessment of a farmer judging livestock. "She is the picture of life," Morven insisted, but his voice wavered. "She is a picture, my lord. A beautifully rendered lie." Lyra grabbed his arm, her grip fierce. "You feel it, don't you? The emptiness in this house. The silence in your heart when she is near. That is not your daughter. Your daughter is at peace. This thing is a canker, and it is feeding on you. It has my father trapped in wax. It will do the same to me, and then to you, until this entire city is its silent, waxy court." Tears welled in Lord Morven's eyes. "No, I cannot believe it. I have her back." "You have a tomb that smiles," Lyra whispered. "And if you do not help me, it will be our tomb, too." The conflict warred on his face, the desperate father versus the nobleman who could still, faintly, perceive truth. Finally, with a shuddering sob, he crumpled. "What must I do?" Chapter 5, The Unmaking. The plan was fraught with peril. While the ball was at its peak, Lyra and Lord Morven would retreat to the solarium. Morven would confront the creature, and in that moment of shattered illusion, Lyra would perform the unmaking. They found Lyra there, waiting for them. She stood before the alcove containing the effigy of Silas, her back to them. "I knew you would betray me, father," she said without turning around. Her voice was flat, all pretense of sweetness gone. The love of humans is such a fragile, fickle thing. It breaks so easily. She turned. Her face was shifting, the pretty features softening, becoming more malleable, like clay left in the rain. "And you, sister, you come to take your toy back. You are not a toy. You are a mistake," Lyra said, her voice steady though her hands shook. She opened her satchel, pulling out her tools and a small, personal candle made from her own hair and tallow, the focus for her own life force. "I am what you made me." The creature shrieked, and its voice was now a chorus of whispers, the sound of a forest of dead trees rubbing together. The flowers in the solarium withered instantly, their vibrant colors leaching away to a uniform, deathly gray. Lord Morven cried out, finally seeing the truth. The beautiful daughter was gone, replaced by a shifting, wrathful thing of wax and shadow. By the gods, what have I done? You loved a lie, the creature roared, and it lunged for him. Now, Lyra screamed. She plunged her hand into the flame of her personal candle. The pain was excruciating, a white-hot agony that traveled up her arm. But she did not pull away. She focused, pouring her will, her memories, her very essence into the fire. This was the sacrifice, a piece of her soul, offered to fill the void she had created. A brilliant, pure white light erupted from the candle, striking the creature in the chest. It froze, its form shuddering violently. The glamour shattered completely. Lord Morven saw it for what it was, a grotesque, faceless mannequin of pale wax, with two pits of swirling green darkness for eyes. I renounce you, Lord Morven shouted, his voice cracking with a grief more profound than any that had come before. You are not my daughter. Be gone. The creature wailed, a sound of tearing fabric and breaking glass. The truth, from the source of its power, was a poison. The connection was broken. Lyra, her strength failing, stumbled towards it. With her other hand, she smeared the burning tallow from her candle onto the creature's chest, directly over the place where her blood had first fallen. The shape I gave, I now take back. She chanted, her voice a raw whisper. The spark I stole, I now return. By my pain, by my truth, by my sacrifice, be unmade. The wax of the creature's body began to melt. It did not drip, but flowed upwards, like a film being peeled from the world. The green light in its eyes gutted and died. The form of Alara collapsed, not into a corpse, but into a pile of inert, ordinary wax. From within it, a faint, silvery wisp, the last echo of the real Alara's memory, drifted up towards the ceiling and dissipated into peace. The oppressive weight in the manor lifted. The air felt clean for the first time in weeks. Lyra fell to her knees, cradling her burned hand. The light from her candle was now dim, and she felt a permanent coldness inside her, a hollow where a part of her had been forever given. From the alcove, there was a soft cracking sound. The waxen shell of her father splintered and fell away in chunks. Silas stumbled forward, gasping, collapsing onto the floor. He was alive. He was free. Epilogue. The new keeper. They buried the pile of wax in the manor's crypt, a nameless marker for a tragedy that never should have been. Lord Morven, a broken man, endowed them with enough wealth to live 100 lifetimes, not as payment, but as penance. He would spend the rest of his days in a monastery, seeking absolution for his role in the nightmare. Lyra and Silas returned to Mirefen, but the house of Tallow and Woe held no comfort for them any more. The memory of the thing they had fought lingered in every shadowed corner. Silas's hands trembled too much now to hold a sculpting tool. The fire in him had been extinguished. But Lyra's, though diminished, still burned. She had looked into the abyss of her own power and had seen its terrible cost. She had learned that some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed. A part of her was now forever in that void, a sentinel against what might try to crawl through. They moved to a small, bright cottage on the edge of a sane and sunny village, far from bogs and sunken cities. Silas kept a garden, his hands finding solace in the real, uncomplicated earth. Lyra did not abandon her craft. She still made candles, but they were simple, honest things of beeswax and scented oils, that gave light and comfort without demanding a price. And sometimes, very rarely, a person would find their way to her door, their eyes shadowed by a grief so profound it threatened to consume them. They had heard whispers of a woman who understood the shape of sorrow. Lyra would listen to their stories. She would not offer them an effigy. Instead, from a special box of dark, fragrant wood, she would take a candle. It was a unique candle, made with a drop of her own blood and a fragment of her scarred soul. She would light it, and as it burned, it would draw the sharp, poisonous edge of the grief into itself, allowing them to remember their lost ones with love, not agony. She asked for no payment. The peace in their eyes when the candle gutted out was fear enough. She was no longer the Tallow-Keeper's daughter. She was the candle witch, the mender of hearts. And she alone knew that the brightest lights are often born from the deepest, most carefully tended darkness. She sat by her hearth, the permanent chill in her bones a constant reminder, and looked into the gentle, forgiving flame, waiting for the next lost soul to find their way home.
If you feel a chill down your spine, don't worry. They're just standing behind you, listening with you. Thank you for daring to enter the world of fairy tales of Nim. We'll see you again next night, if you're still around.